Okay, I want to make a motion that we have Peter as the chair tonight to run the meeting.
I second that motion.
Commissioner Britt.
Are we started? Are we online for, or should we?
All in favor is what you need to say.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Nice job.
For tonight, I will be helping in place of Ryan Lufkin, who's out of town. So, so I guess do we call the meeting to order officially, or has that already happened? Let's. Okay. We'll officially call the meeting to order. I think do we need to vote on that as well? Okay. All right. We're here. Today is Thursday, February 13th, 2025, and we have, let's see, 4 of us here, and we may see Emily a little later on. Would you like our names? Okay, great. All right, the first item of business is a discussion and consideration of commission chairmanship. Molly, as we know, was unable to continue, and it's time for a new person to be nominated. Do we have any? I'm sure there's been some conversations with, I think, Sean, and I talked a bit with Ryan as well. Mm-hmm. And so, any ideas or input before we make nominations?
I put a motion that we actually push this decision until next month when Commissioner Lufkin is in attendance.
Okay. Yeah, I
He's
also.
the one that I would.
Right. I spoke with him on the phone yesterday or the day before and told him, this is an item and what what is his opinion on it. And he said he would gladly be the chair, but he's apologetic that he couldn't be here.
Okay.
So
is that verbal commitment? Because I was speaking with Alex about whether or not we should wait until he is in person to make this official.
Do we have a second to do that at this point?
So we're nominating Ryan Lufkin?
No, not quite. Thanks for clarifying. The proposal was for the tabling the discussion about the commission chairmanship until next month. Do we have a second for that, or might we want to entertain a motion to nominate and vote on somebody like Ryan today?
I'm happy to second it. It sounds like a great idea. If we can have more people here, including potentially a new member, I have no idea, but yeah. So that's an official second.
Okay, I have one question before we would vote on that, and that would be: is there any implication of not having an official person at this point?
not necessarily. I mean, Ryan is still the vice chair, so he fills in for that role when the chair is absent.
Okay, so yeah, so
Right.
we're okay to do that for a month. I'd be comfortable with that personally. All those in favor of extending or tabling the discussion and consideration of commission chairmanship until next month or next meeting, please say aye.
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 Okay, we're good there, and
Welcome.
that motion passes regardless. So we'll bring that up next month or next meeting, depending on when that is, and we probably need to decide that later today as well.
Between now and then, it's worth thinking about who you want to be the vice chair as well.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Consider
Good
that.
thoughts. Does anybody else have anything? Well, no, we motioned to pass that on, so we can discuss out of quorum, that sort of thing, as long as we don't have the quorum present. So item number 2, approval of December 17th, 2024 special meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to approve those?
I make a motion to approve December 17th, 2024 special meeting minutes.
Commissioner Donahoe seconds that motion.
Great. All those in favor of the approval of the December 17th, 2024 special meeting minutes, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Okay, those meetings minutes are approved. And moving to number 3 is the next item, which the city will help us with, is the discussion and consideration of a zoning change, ZT-25-001, amending the zoning code to add the Baldwin Radio Factory to the local historic list. Ryan, do you want, or Sean, sorry, do you want to bring that?
Of course, I can speak to this. So I apologize I didn't get you this sooner. I took this through all of the process so far. However, usually, there's not many official items that come through this commission. So I apologize I didn't send the staff report to you guys sooner. I hope you were able to look through it, even briefly. This application is a zoning text amendment. The reason for that is the way that our historic preservation code is set up. To add a property, district, what have you, to the local list has to go through a text amendment because that's embedded in our zoning code. What that means is it goes to all the community councils, Historic Preservation Commission, Planning Commission, and City Council for them to actually make that change. So there's a bit of a process behind it. So this has gone to all 4 community councils here in Millcreek. Even if they're not affected by it, right? They still have to go to all of them. All of those community councils were very much in favor of adding this. There were some questions on what benefits are gained by it, what restrictions, things like that, which I spoke to, but none of them were big enough issues that anybody had, any problems with them or anything like that. So that's where it's been so far. As you guys know, the Baldwin Radio Factory was built the early 20th century between 1915 and 1922, somewhat incrementally as the business grew. Nathaniel Baldwin, the founder of the Baldwin Radio Company, was the creator of what we kind of consider now as headphones and speaker systems, which is what this factory largely produced. And it produced those mainly for the Navy with contracts then during World War I and right afterwards. In the second half of the 1920s, Nathaniel Baldwin fell on harder times, and the factory kind of languished a little bit and changed hands. Over the years between then and the early 90s, it was a lot of different uses, and there was a lot of deferred maintenance. In 1996, Kevin Flynn, the current property owner, bought the property and fixed up lots of areas of it. And made a lot of small art studios within these back kind of rooms here that you can see on this page. These are mostly all art studios now, which is what we're looking at here. On the front of the building, there's a cafe as well as an antique store. So it's kind of a mix of a lot of different small businesses and local businesses as well. Adding a property to this historic designation list, local historic designation lists, does a couple things. It adds a few more restrictions in terms of design standards and changing the site, but it also adds some benefits that a property owner may be allowed to apply for a conditional use permit they may not be otherwise able to. In this case, the city is the applicant, as the Historic Preservation Commission in the past has kind of shown interest and wanted to see this on that list, as this is a pretty important piece of historic history here for Millcreek. So that's why the city is the applicant in this case. After that, actually, once we started this process, there was a code compliance case brought up that one of the outbuildings on the property had a short-term rental being used on it. What that means is, they're renting it out like an Airbnb, something along those lines. However, in the zoning that it's in right now, which is C1, that's actually not a permitted use. So I apologize, I'm doing like 3 things right now. So what that means is the property owner could not run that business, that's short-term rental, out of there, and it's not allowed in his zone. So he actually came to the city hoping to rezone it to a zone that would be more amenable to that. Other commercial zones still require that as a conditional use anyhow. But that actually dovetailed really well with the city's intention of adding this to this local list, because it opens up that ability for him to apply for conditional uses for a use like that without going through the rezone. Now, were he to do this, he would be the applicant for that conditional use, and it still has to go through a public hearing process and would come back through this body as well. But that's in the future. And with a conditional use permit, there's just that conditions that can be put on it. In some cases, the community councils didn't want this to become lots of short-term rentals, which isn't really his intention, but that's something that can be put in that. So there's checks in that system as well. That's something for later, but I did kind of want to put that out there just so you know that that's what's been going on in the background as well. If you look at the site, over time, there were some outbuildings built in what is the parking lot now. And one of those is where the short-term rental is. So if we look here, this is the Baldwin Radio Factory. There's an outbuilding back here, and then there are 2 buildings here. This is the one that currently hosts that short-term rental, which he can't use until he gets that conditional use permit. So that's just some background there. Now, adding it to our local list would put it up with the other 4 properties we have. It's somewhat already within our local list as it's within the Evergreen Historic District. But by having it individually listed, they can apply for those conditional use permits because they don't apply to a district as a whole. They apply to specific sites. So that's kind of why we're also going through this as well in that sense. So that's largely the history, pun not intended, of it. But this is kind of the background of it. And, we have some pictures that are always kind of interesting, which were in that staff report as well. Some of these older ones are kind of cool. But yeah, any questions you guys have on this or things you want me to explain in greater detail?
Any questions about?
So
the
we're
proposal?
just, the task at hand is to
Recommend
to,
adding,
it's just a recommendation from this
right,
body.
from this body that this be added to the local list of historic sites and districts. Doing that means that when it goes to Planning Commission in a couple of weeks, that will be within their staff report that the Community Council said this, the Historic Preservation Commission said this, as well as what staff's general recommendation is and all of the mechanisms that we just kind of talked about and how that all works. That is a recommendation.
And then the city council would be the deciding body.
Right. In the end, the city council will do 2 readings on this as items that go to them do. So the first reading, they kind of hear the same spiel that I'm giving you guys, and then they ask questions. The second reading is when there's an ordinance actually has been drafted and will be passed if they decide to do so.
Thanks. I know we heard and learned about this a little bit last month, or last time we met as well, so we're somewhat familiar with it, I think. What do we want to discuss? Anything? Do we want more clarification about the sort of the potential use for, maybe Sean will ask this, do we, anything else you can tell us about the unintended consequences of adding this to the list and it being rented out? You mentioned something about potentially, there's only one site currently
Right.
on the property that would be rented. And maybe this is not a historic preservation issue for us. Maybe it's more of a zoning issue, but do you think any more detail would be helpful for us to know about as far as potentially other parts or other buildings on the property being used as a short-term rental?
Right. So a conditional use permit runs with the land, and the way that works is the idea, it's kind of a zoning question, but it still goes through you guys, and it has to do with you as well. So a conditional use, there's 3 types of uses. There's permitted, conditional, and prohibited. Prohibited is pretty straightforward. Permitted, yes, you can do it. You can build a single-family home in a single-family neighborhood, right? Straightforward. But it's prohibited to build a skyscraper, right, et cetera. A conditional use is an allowed use, but it kind of goes through a public process in case there's a negative externality it may create. A good example would be, say, a neighborhood restaurant, tavern, or bar. That's going to create a lot of noise and potentially nuisance for neighbors. So go through this public process. Staff would say, we think it needs to close at 10 p.m. It goes through all of this. They get their conditional use permit with this condition. The business must close at 10 p.m. If they don't, they get fined. They get their conditional use permit revoked. They can't run their business, right? That's the same kind of thing that we'd be considering here, right? If say, Kevin Flynn were to come through and say, I want to do a short-term rental, it could say, allow a short-term rental within this building. No other short-term rentals are allowed. There has to be ample parking. There has to be whatever else. And that's what it is. If they want to change that, they have to go back through the whole process. If they break outside of that, the permit can be revoked or another code compliance case will be kind of brought in. So there's some teeth as that goes through. How it relates to you as well is, since it's on the historic list, when it comes through and you guys make a recommendation like you're doing tonight, you'd be looking at, does this fit with the site? Is this going to change the historic nature of the site? If so, what can we do to offset that? Something along those lines. So you still will have a recommendation within there on if you think this is right or wrong, or if so, what do you think needs to be done to make sure it doesn't affect the site in a negative way or neighbors in that way.
Does the conditional use allow for short and long-term rentals, or just one or the other?
Just short term, because that's its own use. They can apply for a conditional use for many different things, but short-term rental is its own conditional use they could apply for.
Does our adding it to this list make that make the way for a long-term rental usage easier later if he changes?
Long-term rentals aren't necessarily allowed because it's in a commercial zone.
Okay.
Short-term rentals are, but it's not a listed use as a long-term
Got it.
rental. So that's not usually something that would be allowed.
Got it. Thanks.
I mean, it just seems like in no way is this diminishing the historical character of this building. And it seems within our purview, and the thing we're supposed to be doing is getting things on this list. So, I mean, it sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, I'm in favor of it as well.
Same. Do you need us to vote?
Yeah, so if somebody wants to make a motion, I apologize, I don't have a model motion, but a recommendation on whether this should or should not be added to the local historic list.
Would somebody like to make that a motion like that?
Okay. Commissioner Donahoe, I make a recommendation that we add the Baldwin Radio Factory to the local historic list.
I'll second. Commissioner Johnson.
Okay, we have the second. Let's vote on it. All those in favor of amending the zoning code to add the Baldwin Radio Factory to the local historic list, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Sweet, thank you.
Okay, that passed. All right, yeah, I can do math. Number 4, discussion on practical preservation community history event. This is a discussion. I think Emily probably has some information about that.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if y'all were able to, this was a long email thread, I apologize, in your inboxes. But essentially I manage the museum field services team for the state of Utah. Part of what we've been doing is partnering with the Historical Society to offer practical preservation workshops that are taking place for communities or audiences outside of museum organizations where interesting collections might be stewarded. Does that make sense? So working with either community groups that are founded around a congregation, a location, a racial or ethnic history, a tribe, it doesn't really matter, but lots of different formations of people, again, that steward collections that exist outside of institutions. We've had some success with these. Part of them is opening them up for attendees to bring an item with them, and then there's some one-on-one consultation that can happen about the preservation of that item with our outreach conservator or with me or someone else who's facilitating the conversation. So it's really about practical, low-cost, low-stakes interventions that people can make when caring for things in their homes or their churches or their community group buildings or whatever else that, again, will help them last longer into the future, help communicate the importance of those objects to whatever next generation will be stewarding them, and just taking better care of them in the longer term. So my question is basically, if the Historic Commission wants to sponsor a workshop like this, what that might look like and when we could do it. I obviously have a format. It includes really minimal instruction, like an hour and a half, and the rest of the time is spent in like small group activities or within, like I mentioned, that one-on-one consultation kind of space. There's no cost. This is just my job, so we just do it. I guess we would be looking to the city to help find an appropriate space, and then to the Historic Commission to bring in the appropriate audience. So it's not necessarily, for the people sitting here, but it's for people we are inviting from our community who might get some use out of this kind of information. So those are kind of my two items, I guess, for the group is, do we want to do this? Are we the right people to host something like this? And if the answer is yes to those two things, when might we want to do it?
And we talked about some of the in the email, there was some discussion about the implications of when and also notifying the public when to publicize it, how that would work. Yeah, thank you. Any thoughts?
What's the interest level on it? I mean, when you guys have advertised this in the past, do you end up with just piles of people coming in, or is it, I just imagine the community of Millcreek having tons of interest in this. And how do you guys handle that?
Yeah. I do not work with the general public. I don't know how to do that, which is why a community group as an anchor is pretty key. So far we've had good experiences with the Cambodian Buddhist Temple or the Genealogical Society of Hispanic America. Those are groups that are pulling on their membership, and we're using them as an anchor to deliver information to their membership. So this would be a little different. We would absolutely want to go out with a cap, just so I know I can get enough staff there to appropriately facilitate. But this would be the first kind of foray into the general public. I'm not communicating with the public. We as a body are communicating with the public. So it's a little different.
So it sounds like we would want to have a sign-up list.
Oh yeah, I'll set up an Eventbrite. People will register. They don't have to pay for it, but there will be a registration process so that we, if we have a wait list or whatever, you can manage all of that kind of stuff. But to your question, I don't know. Maybe, not no, but maybe.
There might be enough interest that it gets, I don't want to commit you, but you could do it again. I have no idea.
Totally, yeah. I don't have any externally driven deadline. It was just, I just thought I was like, who are my audience? What are my community groups? And I was like, well, there's the Historic Commission. So here we are.
It sounds like we would anticipate a good showing, and it almost might be the kind of thing we could do next fall or some other time. Is there maybe a question for the city? Is there a room that we'd anticipate being best for that? Maybe knowing what the state would need for that.
Well, I cannot easily buy food, so if that's something you want as part of this, I don't want to be in charge of that. A space to accommodate, the correct number of people, I think we would want to cap it at 40, just so I can make sure we can still facilitate small groups and I can make my staff show up when they need to. We've done this as part of conferences that have been in town. We've done it on a Saturday, never done an evening event, but I am not opposed. So I would look to y'all as knowing your community to be able to decide what the best timing would be, and I would try to meet you there. I don't have an agenda, so to speak, for any of that. So
Thanks.
I can speak to some of that. I think, the sixth floor here would be a great spot for it. That's where we've been for other events. We have to book out when we look for it because there's a lot of people that rent up there. And if it's going to be 40 people, that would largely be the bigger room, which it gets more bookings than the smaller one.
I mean, we can cap it at 20 if you want.
It's up to you. I don't. But either way, so we can definitely host it here, which is fine. And as for food, I will kick that to Francis. But usually for these types of events, he does do something. In speaking with him briefly about this, he said a Saturday is probably great, just because we get more turnout than that on those days than when people are at work or in the evening. We've had multiple meetings of meet with planning staff for certain applications, what have you. And we do them usually Saturday mornings, and we get, a handful of people, some breakfast food up there, coffee and what have you. And that it seems to pull in a good crowd. As for getting the word out about it, I mean, Rita would probably be a better person to speak to that, but I'd assume that our printed newsletter would probably be a good thing with a QR code to, the sign up or whatever it is. But that would be my kind of guess. If we're going to do the general public through the newsletter, is probably going to be the best way to reach out to people. Setting it on a Saturday would probably be the easiest for most people that are interested. And then we can host it here on the sixth floor. Once we kind of have a date, we can set that out.
Okay, we got to decide on that cap then.
Right. The cap comes more on your end. We can fit a lot of too many people upstairs. So, if you have staff that's comfortable with 30 people, we can do that. If you have staff that's comfortable with up to 50 people, we can do that. It's whatever kind of fits on your end, we can kind of accommodate. You don't need to answer it now.
I'm just
think about it.
using my fingers and toes to count my staff, and then about how many would make sense. And yeah, I think 40, and then I would have 6 to 8 staff with me. Well, me included would be 6 to 8. So we can facilitate small groups. I would be comfortable there, and then seeing how it went, scaling either back or bigger from there.
Okay. Yeah, that works for me.
Considering the time it takes to get something in print, and just the advance kind of needing to get the content there. I think we have the March one here already, right? And so is it the kind of thing where maybe we could rely, do we think we could rely on the email, another public notice of some form, rather than like a need to wait for this in order to get 40 people? I think there was a kind of a preference on your end, Emily, to get it scheduled sooner than later in the sense of.
Yeah, just because I know there's just several things coming up that are going to impact weekends in April, May, June. July is we usually consider it pretty wasted in terms of programming. We don't try to do a lot in July because you all live in Utah, So anyhow, but if we want to talk about the fall, that is also totally fine. I don't have an externally driven deadline. It's just an opportunity.
I mean, maybe the fall is the ideal time. It gives plenty of time. You could reserve it time now. You could work with your folks. We could get the word out. You could have an article in the newsletter prompting people, I don't know. I mean, I was thinking, I suggested May just because it's archaeology and historic preservation month, and it seemed like it'd pair up well, but I don't know. That was just a suggestion. I think fall sounds awesome.
And I'm like, okay, if you want May, you can have the 17th.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's it.
I think fall sounds fantastic.
Yeah, so is there an order of operations that the first step would be talking with the folks who reserve the space and find out what those dates are, and then overlay that with what your availability is with your team?
Yeah, and I can propose some dates maybe in August, September. Well, September, October for us is conference season. That's when all museum conferences happen, kind of all at the same time. So August would probably be best.
Okay. Yeah, I'll make a note to kind of look into that and figure out what the event schedule looks like up there.
Okay.
And then pick which dates they're available and then send those to you and see if any of those match up. And then once we get one, we can reserve that out so nobody rents it between now and then.
Great. And I would really anticipate like 10 a.m. to like 12:30 or something. Like, so you could easily still accommodate an evening rental or whatever. if
Yeah,
there
no,
was already.
that sounds good.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to get up earlier than that on a
No.
Saturday.
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of things to arrange. Yeah, and I can take a look at our calendars too, and even maybe just send the versions of dates that are possible.
Okay. Yeah, that works.
Cool. Thanks.
Any other thoughts? I think, any thoughts or other suggestions of agreement or concerns with this before we move on? Okay, so nothing to decide on this item. It's, I think we just keep working on it and off the record as a non-quorum. Let's see.
Were we not a quorum?
Oh, today we have a quorum, yes, but like out of it, we're not meeting as a quorum to discuss. It's kind of we discuss as up to 3 of us at a time, right? Am I thinking right? Okay. So that's the 4th item on our list. Should we move on let's move to subcommittee updates. I feel like we probably need to reorganize in some ways with this and kind of get some steam with this, but maybe we wait or I think our plan probably should be to wait until the new person is selected for the chairmanship. But in the meantime, are there any subcommittee updates that we might have?
I have just a quick one. I was at the Whitmore Library and saw the Cottonwood Heights Historic Preservation Commission has these lovely flyers. There is an abundance of them, like 7, I think, altogether. They're just like a trifold walking tour of various places in their community. It would take some time to pull something like this together and find funding and things like that, but I can see this could be something that would be potentially well received in our neck of the woods. If you want to just take a look, and I'm not like officially proposing anything, but just maybe something to think about in the coming year, that we could maybe explore some options of having something like this printed so that we could
Just evergreen area, just walking up and down evergreen.
so.
Yeah, I think the Evergreen area, and then I think we've talked about maybe the Veteran Heights as well, or not Veteran Heights, but
Mount Air.
Mount Air
Yeah.
as being a good one for that.
For all of the items, all of the assets, sites on the local list. There's
Yeah.
any number of things that we could pursue. I'd probably recommend just starting with one and seeing how it goes, maybe, and then going from there. But I thought it was a good model. And I know that members of our commission have talked with Cottonwood Heights Commission about things, and so I'm sure they would be happy to talk more specifics about this particular program that they do for their community.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. Any other thoughts or subcommittee items to discuss?
I feel like my subcommittee update is the workshop thing. I'm counting it as subcommittee activity.
Sounds good to me. All right, in the absence of anything else, I think we should go to staff updates from the city.
Yeah, not too much. I can say that in speaking with Francis, there's been a handful of people that have applied for that position. So when he's back, he is currently in London for the next week or so. When he's back, we're going to set up a time to do some interviews there. Obviously, we can't have a quorum of people there, but if a couple commissioners would like to be there for that, we would highly encourage that as well. You can fight amongst yourselves as to who, but I don't know exactly his timing, but there's a handful of different applicants that I think he's gotten 3 or 4.
Do you
So
know
there's
if they're from the district?
I have
one?
no idea.
I
Because
know
this was
one of
from
them
him.
is.
Yeah.
The one Ari and I talked about at our last meeting applied, and she's in the right district, right?
Excellent.
I thought so too.
Right. So I haven't seen the other ones. I don't know exactly, but I guess Francis has gotten a few. So, when he's back, we can kind of look into that. And that'll be something we'll obviously schedule out and put in the email of when or where, and just kind of go from there. So update on that. The other update I can think of is, I believe it was last month, at the State Historic Preservation meeting, they recommended that the Mount Air Acres neighborhood be designated to the national list. So that's cool. So now we're waiting on the federal government Park Service on whether that will be approved or not. It seems like it likely will because it meets a lot of the credentials for that. But that's something that's kind of fun that should be hopefully getting an answer in the next couple months, probably. That's all I can think of. I don't know if Rita has stuff on newsletters.
Here, Rita, you can have one of those to see from the Cottonwood Heights.
Rita, how do you get feedback about the articles? Because you do mention that people love them. So I'm curious how we know. I love that.
Is it just elementary schools?
Do we have any articles in the queue? I wish Ryan were here. Okay. And there's the Veteran Heights one that I seriously copy pasted from Kirk's work. But we were going to hold off on that because we didn't want to conflate the Mount Air Acres.
Yeah,
Is
I think
that
we were
right?
waiting until we got that done so people aren't like, I thought it was Mount Air that was getting this
Yeah.
thing. And so I think once we kind of have that a little more wrapped up with that national listing, then kind of go that way.
Has there been an article about Mount Air?
I'd assume so.
I
I don't
also
remember off the top of my
assume
head.
so.
Remember what
I'm
has
assuming.
been done and not. So I wonder.
Oh, that.
So you had mentioned, Rita, at the beginning that you need an article for April's issue by the 19th of February, which is next week.
Well, if we haven't had one on Mount Air Acres, I'm also assuming we have a list, but that's another assumption I'm making.
Ryan has one either mentally or actually on
Yes.
on paper somewhere.
Okay, so we need a list of what we've done. We should be archiving our own work because we are the Historic Preservation Commission. Okay, great.
And Ryan has a spreadsheet running.
In his brain or in real life?
No, in
Okay.
IRL.
Great.
Technically, it's in the cloud, but
It's not a tangible printed.
If we don't have one about Mount Air Acres, I think we could, again, like repurpose some of Kirk's work, into an article relatively easily. If that's not going to be a solution, either because we've already done it, or for another reason I can't anticipate currently, what else? What other ideas do we have?
Well, they put that plaque in front of the apartment buildings that went in over on Highland.
Oh, the Winder Ward.
Yeah, so we could do something on that plaque.
Are you volunteering?
I'm not a good writer.
People to that lovely song that Francis shared with us
Yeah,
about.
that's right.
Did you guys listen to that lovely little ditty?
Yeah.
Oh, I
I drive by it and I see that it's out there, so
got some stuff sent to me about one of the houses I think we added to our first list, where the current rabbi lives from Kolami, just up here off right off of 33rd, and about a murder that took place on the porch.
I can tell you about that one.
It was a friend of mine's like great grandfather or something, and she sent me all the articles.
I probably know your friend. It's my great grandpa too. That's why I was.
Her name is Noelle. She was at Johnson when I went to school with her. I think she's a Wojciechowski now, something like that.
We should talk about that. Yeah, yeah. That would be an interesting one to do.
I hear volunteer
I'd be happy to work on that one.
To elementary school children.
to send home to elementary school children,
That's true.
and to put that particular house on a list of like known crimes.
Yeah.
Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe we save that for Halloween.
Yeah, let's think about how we can tactily do that one. But yeah, because I got a little too graphic in probably the last one for children as well with the.
Probably good to consider our audience.
Okay. Yeah. That would be a good one, or it would be, I think, a notable thing to do for sure. There's several other topics I think that we could probably start brainstorming on and just put in the queue. There's a really cool one about an African American woman who lived in Millcreek, grew up here, and was interviewed by the University of Utah, a researcher up there. And so it's an oral history that they did. And I think I've been thinking we could excerpt some of that story or that history. There's some other cool sort of community history groups that we could highlight through something like this, maybe like the Armenian groups that came as refugees in the early 1900s, I think. They would be fun to do that. I think there's a lot we could do. So maybe that can be our own individual goals for the for the month if we want to, is to like think about that and see what our individual interests might be and how we could contribute there.
But if you need something next week, we need to pull from
Point.
something that exists.
Yeah, Mount Air one seems like it'd be low-hanging fruit
Yeah,
to me.
agreed. Okay, well, I can volunteer to dig up what we've maybe already written and published about Mount Air. And if it is as easy as recycling something someone else wrote, I can do that.
Yes. I have plenty of pictures.
And as a backup, I think I could probably just take excerpts from Lucille Bankhead's was the oral history that was done by the University of Utah person. So that could be a backup to the Mount Air.
Okay.
Any other staff updates or anything else related to the newsletter?
Not that I don't have anything, I don't think. Or if I do, I'm forgetting it.
Okay.
I have a question for staff.
Yeah.
As I should know this, but tell me one more time in case I forgot. Where are we at with everything that we are currently contracting with Kirk Huffaker?
Well, right now, I don't think there's anything we really have outside of the national registry
For Mount Air.
for Mount Air.
Okay.
I think we'd have to do another contract when we want to do the Veteran Heights or any individual properties as well. But we're not doing right now, he's not doing a survey for us or anything like that. As we've kind of collected a lot of info, but we haven't used it.
Okay.
So that's kind of to be decided what we want to do with all that. I think our first goal was to kind of get Mount Air because we knew it, and probably Veteran Heights. And then, you know, the individual properties are something that kind of have to be, is better when that property owner initiates it. You know, obviously there's some buildings, say the Baldwin Radio Factory, maybe, you know, the Iceberg Drive-In, things that are really community-oriented places that might make more sense to be done by the city if recommended by the Preservation Commission. But individual homes are usually, in my opinion, I think it's better when that comes from that property owner. Now, that means we could reach out to a lot of those property owners and say, hey, there was a survey done, you might meet these standards. If you want to talk more about it, we can, you know, discuss that. But that's, I think, where we're at, from my knowledge, with everything with Kurt. And
Do we have budget left in our CLG grant to pursue the Veteran Heights nomination?
the
federal
CLG grant
nomination?
is done.
It's done.
That closed in the summer.
Are we reapplying right now?
No, we did not reapply this year, and I think some of that was largely, I forget why. I think there might be that we just got it, so we might have to have some time before we applied again. And I don't think we just had direction on what we wanted to do with that, because, you know, we take direction from this commission. I think our focus was more on getting Mount Air done, and then, to be honest, planning staff has been pretty busy with updating our entire zoning code, so that's taken a lot of our energy, which is almost done. So that's great. Hooray. But that, you know, I think that's kind of been more on the front of our minds. But that doesn't mean we can't still look at other grants in the coming cycle and things like that.
I mean, if we can do a lot of it without the grant, I suppose it doesn't really matter, but
Yeah, and I don't know, you know, the funding stuff, Francis, I'm going to let him speak to that just because that's definitely above my pay grade.
I would like to pursue a national or federal nomination for Veteran Heights.
Yeah, and I think that's on the list. I think it's something that we want to do. And it's also kind of interesting because it will come in with different criteria than, say, Mount Air, as it's a social history thing. So that's really interesting. And you know, when we sent out a courtesy kind of letter to everybody there telling them, we didn't really get much of a response from people saying they don't want it or anything like that. But I think the plan, from what I remember, was once we're kind of wrapped up with the Mount Air thing, we would kind of go into that, just so we're not overwhelming ourselves.
No, I love to hear that, and that's kind of what I thought too. So it's good to be reminded.
Do any of us know right off what the date would be for the application for a new grant, assuming we can do it the next cycle?
A new CLG?
I have no idea.
I can find out. Just give me like a second.
There's a handful of different organizations that do grants, and I know I pulled out all the dates a while ago for them, but I don't remember what they are. But I think a lot of them are in the spring, between probably now and April, May. But you know, they're pretty specific. They can be pretty specific. You know, it has to be a project that's doing A through D only, and has to be all of these parameters. There's also, you know, some consideration on where grants come from, especially right now with certain funding freezes from the federal government, and what that does for potential grants that would usually be opening up in the coming months. I don't know.
CLG grants are Park Service, DOI. I'm looking at Ari, assuming you'll know. But
That would be the Park Service.
yeah, I think they're NPS or DOI funds.
That makes sense to me, that we should probably look at that and make sure, and then start thinking about what projects we would want to prioritize.
CLGs are in January, so we've missed it for this year.
One of the, I think we probably don't want to take much more time, especially but we've talked about the website, kind of developing the website further as being a priority, and I know there's a lot up already, and I don't know how much of that might take funding, but I think that's been a topic of discussion in the past for CLG funding.
The archival website.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we haven't really done anything on that. And that's kind of on staff's fault there. It's another project that we definitely want to do, but has just kind of been pushed as we've been really busy, and planning staff isn't the biggest department, and between current planning, long range stuff, responding to state legislation things, and then what we already do for historic preservation, we're spread a little thin. But that doesn't mean it's not, on our list too. It's just one of those, we don't want to bite it off until we know we definitely have the resources to maintain and do it correctly. But I know that's on Francis's list. In a meeting with City Council, kind of a strategic meeting in January, I believe, Francis put out to them the idea of us getting what would be a permit technician that works with the building department and planning department. What that person would do, I know this is a weird aside, but it'll come back around. What they would do is kind of coordinate when people do planning applications, building permits, and what have you, to the correct people. Because right now, if you apply for building permit, you're going to get 4 emails, one from the fire marshal, one from planning, one from building, one from engineering, something like that. You got approved by building, you got denied by planning, you got denied by engineering, but fire says it's okay. You send it's confusing. Even for staff, it can get a little confusing and a lot of work. So the idea would be that we get somebody that can help kind of organize that and make that a lot easier, which would take some weight off of planning staff right now. And that would ideally be able to open up enough space to get some more prioritization for historic preservation and other projects like that. So that's kind of the plan. But that's as far as it is right now. So hopefully we'll have some more firepower in a little bit to do that, to open up some more resources to get more historic stuff, whether that be the website, more grants for things, and getting more stuff on that national registry. But we can only do so much at the time being, I guess.
Yeah, thank you. We realize you guys were awesome to mentor us all through especially the first year or so.
Yeah, likewise.
What we are. So thanks for that.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, I don't know how formally we want to decide something, but I think we probably should try to be thinking, planning long term, next year or so, what our sort of big lifts would be relatively, and maybe think about and get the city's input on how much they need to be involved as well. Anything else we want to discuss? If not, I think we would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks. That's it.